tonight, seeking our community's support. I hope it will be a long-lasting friendship. I now ask you to give a very warm welcome to a remarkable public servant, Congressman Gutierrez. Chalamolu.
Thank you.
Hema Kanuru. Venkat Chakka. Gabrapalli.
Thank you.
Shri Yaramsetti.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tika, for number one. Thank you to everyone that's supporting me this evening in my re-election effort. I am deeply appreciative. I'm going to talk a little bit because I understand I'm going to have a little time to answer a few questions of yours. So, in the Congress of the United States, there are 435 of us in the House of Representatives. I felt very early on that if you try to be something for everyone, you might wind up accomplishing nothing for anyone. And so I said, I think I should focus on one area, not that the other areas are not important and not ones that I don't give importance to. And it just seemed to me that 20 years ago, nobody was talking about the need to maintain a robust immigration system in the United States of America. Everybody was very happy because we were coming off the 1986 amnesty. Today, when they talk about immigration reform and they talk and refer to it as amnesty, it's a very pejorative term. And they intend for it to be pejorative. But Ronald Reagan's 1986 Immigration Reform and Control Act was indeed an amnesty. Why? Because you simply had to show up at an office, prove you've been here for 4 years, and you got a green card. A green card. And 5 years later, you could apply to become a citizen of the United States. So they took people who were outside the legal system and brought them inside the legal system. That is obviously not what we are attempting to do today as we talk about immigration reform. But I saw people become citizens and citizens and citizens, and then I saw the problems that still had been relegated and not dealt with in the 1986 legislation. And then came the deportations. And as the deportations increased, so did my concern and my energy for comprehensive immigration reform. Now, I believe we need to have a solution to immigration reform that brings Republicans and Democrats together. And that indeed, in the Congress of the United States, there are a sufficient number of Democrats and Republicans to pass it, if only a small group of very right-wing, xenophobic Republicans who don't, it's not that they don't believe in they don't believe in immigrants. They don't want to see an additional immigrant come to this country. They would simply wish to seal our borders and not let anybody else come in the country. They have stopped the progress that we have been able to make. But today's a good day. And while it may not impact anybody particular in this room, you have to understand, this is what I believe, that your future is directly linked to the future of the rest of the immigrant community. And so when one part of that immigrant community thrives and excels and is triumphant, and there is justice and prosperity for that community, you too become stronger and more prosperous as a voice of immigrants in the United States of America. Because it's the totality of immigrants that really we derive our strength. Not from our parts, but from our whole. And so while today it may be an Indian community that I'm speaking to, tomorrow it'll be a Polish one. The next day a Ukrainian one. The next day a Guatemalan one. The next day a group from Haiti or the West Indies. But all together really make a very, very strong case for immigration reform in the United States of America. So it's why is today a good day? Because President Barack Obama said that if the Republicans would not move on immigration reform, then he would use his pen and his executive authority, an executive authority that we must understand he has as President of the United States and has been granted him through the legislative process. So this is something he made up. In 1863, let me give you an example of executive authority. The Emancipation Proclamation was not approved by the House and the Senate and signed by the President of the United States. It was an executive order by the President Lincoln. Now, did we have to amend the Constitution several years later to make that a law? Yes. In 1948, America was still a country divided. Separate but equal was the law of the land. And let me share that most of the people in this room, we would be separate but very unequal in our treatment in the United States of America. 1948, still a law of the land. 1963, we finally passed the Civil Rights Act in 1963. This is 48. And what did President Truman do after we defeated the fascists both in Japan and in Germany? What did he do? He sent an executive order doing what? Saying that no longer in the armed forces of the United States would there be segregation. That all of the units must be desegregated. That black men and white men, brown and yellow, regardless of the color of your skin, you would serve as an integrated unit. It wasn't until 1963 that we passed the Civil Rights Act. How did he do it? Did he call the senators and the congressmen together? No, he said it's wrong to defeat fascism and still have segregation in the armed forces that fought in the Second World War. And so too, the President of the United States, if you refuse to act, I will act. And the Congress refused to act. So what he did is he said, he did several things. Some of it impacts your community directly in terms of the IT community. But broadly today, the issue was the following, because the Republicans really focused on this. He said, if you're in the United States of America, and you've been here 5 years, and you have American citizen children, of which there are millions of American citizen children whose parents are undocumented, hundreds of thousands of which have been deported from the United States and separated from those American citizen children. He said, here's what I'm going to do. You go through a background check. You show that the only problem you legally have is your immigration status, and I'm going to give you a work permit. I'm not going to give you food stamps. I'm not going to give you a housing voucher. I'm not going to give you clothing on your back. I'm going to give you a work permit so you can go to work, you can register with the government, you go through a criminal background check, and you work, and you pay taxes, and you begin to incorporate yourself into American society. A work permit, that's what you get. So that you can feed, you can clothe, and you can shelter those American citizen children. That's what he did. Of course, the Republicans went crazy, said he was overstepping the bounds of the law, and sued him. Of course, you can always find a judge in America. Yeah, this is a very democratic country, but there are judges and then there are judges in the United States of America, and there are ideological judges in the United States that are very conservative. So they went and found a judge in Texas. They didn't come to Chicago to find a judge, or San Francisco or New York. They found one in Texas. And the judge stopped the program. What did the Supreme Court say today? They are taking the case. And that case will be decided by the Supreme Court of the United States in June of this year. And let me just suggest to you that in June of this year, there will be ample celebration throughout the immigrant communities when 4 million undocumented men and women who have American citizen children are going to be given an opportunity, because the Supreme Court is going to uphold the President of the United States and his executive order. And that's a triumph for the immigrant community that we can celebrate tonight. And you say, well, how are we out? I know we're interconnected. I met this wonderful family from India in Houston, Texas, at a rally we had. Now, the room was full of Gonzalez's and Rodriguez's and Ramirez and Gutierrez, right? But here was a family from India, a man and a woman who had come here 11 years earlier on an H-1B visa. They had a prosperous marriage, and from that marriage came 2 children. They lost their visas. Their company went bankrupt that they were working for, and they lost their visas. And they had orders to leave. They couldn't stay legally in the United States. Now, some people would simply say, I'm staying. They felt compelled to follow the law and to return to India. The problem was, what? They had 2 American citizen children. And their dilemma was, do I return to India with these 2 American and not be able to provide them everything I've been able to provide them here in Houston, Texas? They weren't going to be able to provide them with the same quality education, and they were American citizens by birth. So they were going to take them to a country that was not their birth, and in which they did not have citizenship. Just imagine, this is how crazy our immigration system. They go back to India, they'll say those children are illegally in India. They're not supposed to be there. They're not citizens and legally there. So I understand how the immigration system affects men and women at all levels, and how we need to fix our immigration system. And so today I'm here to say thank you to so many of you for supporting and generously supporting my campaign. But to also say we really should be a network, and we should broaden our network. Because while your focus is business, the Congress of the United States needs to be part and parcel of your agenda as you move forward. So today's really a day. I've had a great day. I love being in Chicago. As you see, I don't have to wear a suit. I'm not in Washington, D.C. So I get to put on a sweater and go to work and meet with constituents and see people all day. And I love my job. I'm going to share something with you, and then I'll take your questions. And how I feel the relevance of my job. Because you were talking about Puerto Ricans and Mexicans, right? Number one, we're not all that different, Puerto Ricans and Mexicans. We speak the same language. We are pretty much Catholics, right? Yes, and the food that we eat, while different, is the same in many, many aspects. Of course, Puerto Ricans like baseball, and Mexicans like soccer. But those are small things that divide us. I was on an airplane once with my wife, and we were going back to Puerto Rico. And I said to my wife, I said, honey, did you notice it's like the plane was full of Puerto Ricans returning with us back to San Juan? And I said to her, you know, like only 3 or 4 people like came up to me and greeted me. You might think, well, Luis, you have such a, no, it was such a stark, I'll explain to you before you rush to judge me. I said, like only 3 or 4 people, they kind of said hi and they walked by. And she said, well, for them, Luis, you're like somebody that excelled as a Puerto Rican, right? You did good. You won an Academy Award, or you're the pitcher in the World Series. They're proud of you. You did good. So they acknowledge you that way as a fellow Puerto Rican. I said, yeah, but on the plane we took to Guadalajara, I took a picture with everybody on the plane. I mean, it was like 3 hours, and it went so quickly, didn't car, because everybody was interacting and taking. And I said, why was it so different? She said, oh, for them, you're a person that stands up for their human rights, for their civil rights. You fight for them to have. You're not just a star that they see on TV. And you know, everybody wants to be most appreciated by his own people. I don't care how famous you become or relevant you become. You always want to be able to go back home, right? Although they say you're never a prophet in your own land. And as we got off the plane, my wife was so, I don't hire political consultants or do any polling. I simply ask my wife these questions. And I save myself a fortune because she always is able to see through. And as we got off the plane, a woman walked up to my wife and said, I asked for your permission to give your husband a hug and a kiss. And my wife said, certainly. And she gave me a big hug and a kiss, and she said to me, thank you for standing up for my daughter. She was a student at the university, and you stood up against the police brutality against her. And I've always wanted to thank you. So there's a difference. So I didn't go to Congress to become the guy that won the Emmy or the Oscar. I came to protect and defend people's basic civil rights and human rights. So I thankfully, I'm legally, I was born a citizen of the United States, because if I had to, my background check would show multiple arrests in front of the White House, and by the Navy, and by the Armed Forces of the United States, because I believe that every now and then, if you truly believe in what you believe, you need to risk your own freedom so that others can be free. And so I've paid the fines, and have the, how would I say, the criminal background record, some might say. But for me, when I get arrested so that others can't be deported, that's not criminal. What is criminal is deporting those families. When I see a government bombing its own people and I stand up in those bombing rages so they can no longer bomb them and they can no longer kill people, I think I'm standing up for people. I believe I'm standing up for people. I know I'm standing up for people. While in the government may increasingly be criminal. So it's kind of a little bit of who I am. Some of you may know these things, some of you may not. But I am very, very delighted to be here and make new friends. I'm real happy. I checked. It's 85 years old. That's how long we're supposed to last these days in America. Yeah, it's about 85. Pretty good, right? I'm 62. So I want to enjoy the next 23 years a whole lot. Because it seems to me I got like 1/4 of a life left. But I look forward to spending some of that time with people and the men and women here in this room. Thank you so much.
Jewish community to actually represent different communities within US, to go to Israel and actually understand the issues and everything. Fred Zygmunt, who's here, actually just reminded me. So before we open up, I have, I want to make sure that you understand that ITServe is an organization of services and product development companies. There are many CEOs in this room who hire local employment along with many people because of lack of skill and skilled workers in this country. We would have to bring workers from other countries. So there are H-1B dependent companies. Sudhakar in the front, when he was saying about we are not offshore companies. So we are all very small to medium businesses. Most of these companies who are in this room are all small to medium businesses. So recently, my question is, I'm coming to my question is, recently there was an increase in the fees of H-1B to $4,000 plus. And also, USCIS is requiring us, if a person moves from Naperville, in a project in Naperville to Chicago, that we would have to pay another $4,000 to do an amendment. While this is going to cause a lot of hardship for many of our members, and also at the same time, though this was intended more towards the large companies like the TCS and the Infosys and the Wipros, who abuse. We understand there is abuse, and we want to let you know that ITServe is all about preventing fraud, preventing abuse, making sure the companies are following standards, hiring standards and USCIS standards. So how do we work with you and your office to mitigate and to change some of these things?
I think we should work together. Number one, I was a member of the Financial Services Committee. It's a very important committee because you get to deal with all the titans of Wall Street. I left that committee. I had 20 years of seniority on that committee. And I don't know if you understand how important seniority is in the House of Representatives, but it's very important. Because seniority dictates your importance in the committee structure. So of all the Democrats, I was the third highest ranking Democrat in the House of Representatives. I left that committee, resigned from that committee, much to the astonishment of my staff and all my members, but to the happiness of everybody that had less seniority than I did, because they got to move up. And the only way you move up is somebody got to die, lose an election, so you didn't want negative things to happen. And I'm a member of the Judiciary Committee. I joined the Judiciary Committee because I felt that I should really go not where it would be easier for me to be important in terms of the seniority system in Washington, D.C., but important. So if you wish, we can call people. I know the basic answer to your question. USCIS must, under federal law, expense everything according to fees. No money and no assessment against, how would I say this, tax dollars, right, can be used for anything in USCIS. It all must be fee driven. But that doesn't mean that some companies shouldn't pay because of their situation and their condition more than other companies, because obviously Apple, that has billions and billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars in reserve, they have so many billions of dollars, they just have it there, they don't know what to do with it. They don't know what company to buy tomorrow, right? And Cisco system, and we know all of the large companies, they obviously, it's very, very easy for them to pay the money. It can be very hard for a smaller entrepreneur to pay the money. So why don't we have a conversation about that? Number one. I try not to come in assuming, but since Dinkar wants to talk about H-1B visas, let me just tell you a little bit of how I see H-1B visas and how it relates particularly to my philosophical view on immigration. I told you about the larger picture, how we're all really interrelated as an immigrant community. So I want to see H-1B visas, right? I want to see the spouses be able to work. Because I think it's an insanely stupid idea. It's almost like backward. It reminds me when I see women in other countries, as though the only place for a woman is the home and to care for the children, and she has no other expression in her life and in society. I think it's a very backward concept. So I want them to be able to come with their husbands, because one of the things that, I have 2 daughters, and I would hate to see them have a wonderful education, a wonderful mind, a wonderful career, a wonderful talent, and see the government say, well, your husband got that job and got that H-1B visa, you can't work. You can't use that. So I want to see the spouses being able to do that. The other thing is, I think it should be quicker. If you come to America, there should be a clearer, more defined road for those who wish to take that H-1B visa and to convert it to a green card. Because I think after a certain amount of time, you've made a commitment to the United States of America. This begins. And especially as I told you about the Indian family in Houston, right? Once you have kids, and you're sending your kids to school, and I tell my Latino community this all the time, they don't become citizens. There are millions of Latinos that are permanent residents, they don't become citizens. And they have this thing, no, they don't want to betray their country. It's almost like renouncing the citizens is a betrayal. And I tell them, I said, you're going to bury your kids here. You're never going to betray your grandchildren. You want to see them. This is the place you're going to die. This is your country. There was a woman, she's 103 years old. She could barely hear. She could barely see. We got her waivers so she could become a citizen. And I asked, I said, why the urgency at 103? And you know what she told me? She said, all of my children, their wives, and my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren are citizens of the United States. And before I die, I want to be just like them. I mean, that's really the beauty of this country, that before she dies, she wants to be just like them. I know you have other questions I'll be happy to take.
And anybody have a question, raise your hand. I'll bring you the mic. Any questions?
Trying to do the conduct to aliens, the commission. There are some Indians that will come into benefit with that particular thing too. Is there any hope that the entire Congress is going to act anywhere on comprehensive legislation, or nothing at all?
Great question. Let me just suggest to you that, number one, there are thousands of young Indians that are part of the Dreamers. They came here as children with their parents, and today they have their working permit in the United States. The other thing is, there are so many other things that we're doing, and I'm going to explain one to you that may or may not impact you. Because since you do come here legally to the United States, it doesn't impact you as much. But we're doing other things through executive action in order to address the issues of the president. Look, here's what I fundamentally believe. In 2012, the Republican nominee, Mitt Romney, said that his immigration policy was to make it so bad that you would simply leave. the undocumented would simply leave. So self-deportation. They said in 2012 that was a mistake. And it really is a mistake, because think about it one moment. Latinos is the largest minority group in the United States of America. 1 million Latinos turn 18 every year. I know you're thinking, how many of them are legally here? Because I thought that when they first went. 1 million Latinos turn 18 every year. Yes, I'm only counting the ones that are citizens. 1 million. 93% of Latinos under 18 in this country are citizens of the United States. 93% of all Latinos under 18. So, you know, Donald Trump built a wall. The future is still many, many more Latinos. You said, what does that have to do with your question? It has to do with the question because that growing group. Now, I have friends, and I tell them, oh, you know, 73% of all Latinos voted for Democrat, for Barack Obama. This isn't the Democratic caucus. I say, look at my people, we're contributing to the strength of the party. And Mike Conda turned around. He's from San Jose. He said, that's nothing. He says, 84% of all Asians voted for Barack Obama. Now, if you're a Republican and you want to win the presidency of the United States, how do you tell the largest growing legal immigrant community, which is the Asian community, to the United States, and the largest growing immigrant community, the Latino community in the United States, how do you turn your back on them and still expect to win national elections? You don't win national elections. And I really believe that 2016 is going to be a year. So here's what I say. If Democrats win the White House, which I fully expect we will, but we do not have control of the House and the Senate, it is time for responsible women and men to set aside their party affiliation and to get the work done that we can get done. That means I have to make considerable concessions to Republicans. And Republicans have to make considerable decisions. It cannot be a Democratic plan. It cannot be a Republican plan. It has to be an American plan that allows Republicans and Democrats to come together. But here's why you say, but why would they join you, Luis? They're going to join us because they're going to take such a brutal beating politically come November of 2016 because of their immigration policies, with other policies, but that one particularly, that they're going to want to move over to kind of set that one aside so that we can move forward. We did it in the past. Ryan today is Speaker of the House. Paul Ryan, he's Speaker of the House. But in March, I don't know how many of you remember, but in March, a few months of 2013, a few months after losing for Vice President, he was in Chicago with me at the City Club. So I'm going to continue to work with Republicans and continue to work with Democrats, and whoever the next, I believe the next Democratic President of the United States, which I believe is going to be Hillary Clinton. And that's not saying anything derogatory about O'Malley and Bernie Sanders. I think she's going to be the next president. I'm going to say, let's sit down and reach an agreement. It may not be the one, but let's reach that agreement so that we can fix. And part of that is fixing the issues that allow the economy to thrive. I think you are engines of commerce and industry in the United States, and we need to support you because you not only bring jobs for yourself as you immigrate to the United States, you create jobs for other of us. There's going to come a time, hopefully, when our universities, I told my grandson's 12, he says, what should I study? I said, you know what? I told him, where you make with a bachelor's degree $100,000 a year. I'm going to tell them, study that, and then we can figure out some other vocations with you in the future. So this is really the future. You are the future. Technology is the future. People who think things out and figure things out is really the future. Thank you so much for having me here. I know you have other important work to do here this evening. I hope the conversation and the dialogue that we've started today continues into the coming years, and I hope it's been useful for you. Thank you so much for all of you.
We do want to say that, thank you for the offer for us to come and meet with you and kind of talk about our hurdles that we have. And, just to make a note, the comprehensive immigration bill that passed in the Senate has some language that ITServe actually lobbied to put in.
Good.
And that we would like to see that language is carried over in future immigration bills.
Okay.
So thank you again.
Well, I'll be at the center focusing on that language that we have in those bills. And rest assured, we'll be having conversations about what's in the, I think it's a very important, thank you for your contributions, and we'll make sure that we interact. And when I say meet with me, I want to invite people from USCIS at the very highest level to sit down and engage in a conversation about, so that at least we're going to understand how it is they reach the decision. And at least we can begin the conversation about how it is we readjust. I think it's a very good point. Smaller companies shouldn't pay the same as multi-billionaire companies for the same. It's not, the government shouldn't react the same way. We should be promoting you so that one day you can become a large company and hire many, many more people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just I want to invite the Dallas Sport team to say thanks to Mr. Congressman, all the Dallas team. Invite the East Coast team, Amar.
East Coast team.
Invite the Chicago core team.
The Chicago.
Shiva.
Thank you.